Welcome to another episode of Fresh Pulp Magazine's Dark Matters podcast. I am Jay Austin Yoshino. I am your host and I am the editor in chief of Fresh Pulp Magazine. This is my talented and tireless, relentless co host, Margari Hill. She is the co founder and executive director of Muslim Anti Racism Collaborative. They are also a co sponsor of this podcast. So, welcome everyone. I also want to take this opportunity to point everyone to Muslim Arc's good work. They are doing some fantastic things. Please go check out their website, check out their Twitter and their Instagram. Um, Contribute if you can. Any little amount helps. They do some anti-racism competency training, and it rocks. Everybody needs a little bit, at least a little bit of that, probably a lot. Also, go check out our tip button. We have a wish list now up on the website. Plus, we have a tip button on Twitter. That kind of thing helps us get our wish list, helps us do book reviews, helps us pay for this podcast because it's not free to produce this. So, welcome everyone, welcome Marguerite. You've been like off in the deep woods with your acolytes. So, I don't know if that's actually where you've been, but we haven't talked for a minute. So it's good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was in Santa Rosa mountains, sort of like between like San Francisco and Santa Cruz. And largely offline, but there was a lodge where we could get some work done. So, but it was really great to be offline and not able to use my phone and doom scroll um, before going to bed, which I like to do.
Right. You didn't have phone access.
Yeah, no, I didn't. So there was no Wi-Fi, no phone, except for limited times. So it was, my daughter was like, her phone was off, like she was off all week.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty that sounds pretty serene. So, but that's cool. So welcome back. And I'm sorry to have to throw you right into it. Um, but so we're gonna do a science roundup first. Um, and I think we're gonna dedicate this entire science roundup this week to the recent ruling, Henrietta Lacks descendants. It has been ruled by Thermo-Fisher have to pay them money because they continued to profit from the Gila Immortal cell line from Henrietta Lacks after it had been determined that those cells were basically stolen. So, just a little bit of background: they did bring a lawsuit previously against Johns Hopkins and and a bunch of other people, and basically they were not initially given anything. They were not awarded any money, citing that it was basically public domain or some garbage like that. Um, but it was also decided that there could be no further use of it without consent or profit. I'm still muddy on the details. But essentially, that's what this lawsuit is. Thermo Fisher continued using it, and they were like, "We're suing you," and they won. And that was they were awarded, I think, Tuesday, which was actually on her birthday, I think, too, wasn't it? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a bit of the news while I was in the mountains. I wasn't able to read as closely, so just catching up this weekend. I know there's a movie about it, but like it's not just, I mean, for me, it's obviously like the injustice of her family who were denied medical treatment, but the exploitation, right, of the medical, not just the medical apartheid, but the medical experimentation on Black women, and like the fact that her cells, right, like this has been used for the treatment of so many people, that billions of dollars have been made off of her cells, and no compensation to the family, and that they had to fight so hard. It's come this long before they had this ruling.
So, yeah, I mean that's and let's be clear about I mean medical apartheid, which it runs the gamut when it comes to African Americans. I mean, obviously the you had the experiments in Tuskegee, and then you had J. Marion Sims, who experimented on black women so that he could determine the nature and causes of fistulas. But he operated on black women with the assertion or understanding at that time that they didn't that black women didn't feel pain the same way that white women did. So he operated on them without repeatedly experimented on them without anesthetic. Um, but I also want to mention really quickly about this case, like what is a HeLa cell? What is an immortal cell line? And basically, an immortal cell is essentially a cell that continues to propagate even after it's been harvested. So it should die, but it doesn't. And they harvested this cell from her. Was it in the 50s? I think that they harvested from her, but they harvested from her at Johns Hopkins because she had a not a cyst, but like a fibroid or something that they harvested it from. She was having problems with a growth, and it turned out later on that they used that cell to pretty much a massive number, like trillions of dollars of medical advancements have been made off of this one cell harvest. So, and she was not compensated, and there's been a lot of debate about whether or not she's entitled to it because it's like a happenstance, right? Like, oh, we found this whatever cell in this one person. It doesn't mean we got to give her money for it. And that's garbage. But anyway, my so I just wanted to excuse me. I just wanted to tell people what the cell was and why it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like in AP News, they talk about how there's just countless medical and scientific innovations from the polio vaccine to genetic mapping, COVID-19 vaccines. And I mean, just thinking about, I mean, the fact that these cells continuously grow and they're identical, right? Which allows so much. So it's like that. It's it was the suffering of this woman, right? And that they're not paying for something that is like an unlocked secret, and like it's just like and even with the topic that we're actually talking about, empire, right, and the cloning. So it's just like there's just something very like what had happened to her family, and the harvesting of her cells and the reproduction of that does feel very like it's very sci-fi, like it's very
Dystopian.
dystopian in the outcome of that. And then when you think about all the racists, right, like during this time I mean, she died in a segregated hospital, but yet all these racist white people benefit from her, and that's just, just really speaks to that. But I wanted to talk about this kind of like the idea of like Black women not feeling the same type of pain, which still exists in medical literature, like in medical training. And then that myth of like, okay, Black women as superheroes, and it's actually okay to take parts of our bodies, parts of our, our intellectual productions, and to build off of that without compensating. And it's like, thank you, next. So that even when we're saying these kind of immortal cells, um, I mean, I am, in some ways it causes me some discomfort because there is this idea of Black women being magic and being not suffering the same pain, or just assume that like we can take that amount of pain, that the family, through like those constant reminders, like in their loss, right, and in that generational trauma of a Black woman who died in a segregated hospital, um, that all these innovations have been built off of her, and that they had to fight so hard. I mean, these are companies with tons of money, so much money for lawyers, and through many years, whether it's medical malpractice, the, that Black families, including my own, were not able to get just compensation for malpractice or exploitation.
That is an excellent point. I want to to build that out a little bit because you're right. I remember seeing on Twitter not too long ago that there's a textbook that said that that black people actually don't feel as much pain as, and this is like a recent textbook, and I was shocked by this. The other interesting thing is that the instance, for example, of what is it, childbirth death during childbirth for black women is like 5 times. What's the word of it? It's like child mortality, not child mortality, but basically during the process of giving birth, black women are 5 times more likely to die. And there was this big uproar, this big pushback from the medical establishment and from right wingers and everybody else saying no, that's because of poverty and whatever. No, actually, that study controlled for socioeconomic factors, which, by the way, it's absolutely ridiculous to insinuate, to imply that because someone is poor, right, that they deserve to die during childbirth, right?
Hmm.
That's crazy. But yeah, so black women, of the middle class, which was what they controlled for, as compared to same hospital level, same income, same everything, black women still died at a rate 5 times. And the really shocking part about that is that that statistic appears to be global, right? It's not just in America; it's everywhere, which is it says something about what you were saying about this belief that, oh, she can take it, and oh, it's, yeah, she's exaggerating the pain and whatnot. It's absolutely deplorable that medical establishment is still like that. Medical apartheid, as you put it.
Definitely. I mean, it's, you have one like the bias, but when you have that explicit bias being reproduced around like how they understand black pain or, I mean, and, like I've heard of people being denied pain medication, being told like they're going to misuse it. And, so, but there's also that implicit thing, the implicit idea of Black women being able to withstand things because of that, because of our history, right? Of being denied that is like, or like, oh yeah, she can overcome that. She can push through the pain because that's what, her people have been through. And they're just very resilient people, very spiritual, like the
Right.
soul of Black folks. So that's the kind of thing. And that even when we're um even for ourselves, like we may buy into that myth that it's perfectly okay for us to suffer because that's what it means to survive, that we have to like push through and not ask for help or not ask for treatment or alleviating the pain.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, adding to that also, I think that there is this dynamic that exists, particularly in the United States, where black women have had to power through and have had to sort of hunker down. They've had to, right? Because the support services, the support communities were not available. And I think that 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 is often used as a justification for denying those communities basic services, denying those communities mental health services, denying those communities different types of support. It's like, oh yeah, they're fine, or oh yeah, they still manage to whatever. Like, oh, you know what, 5 times the mortality rate. That's all right. There's plenty more where they came from. This really really dehumanizing dynamic at the heart of that, and I think that it also it, it it's a holdover from obviously slavery, right? Because the whole part of the whole reason of slavery was, hey, what? Let's get some black folks who are used to these crazy equatorial temperatures that will be able to work in the heat for like long periods of time, right? So yeah, I think that's where that kind of comes from. And Jim Crow, obviously, it persisted through Jim Crow era.
Yeah, I mean, and even the idea of dehumanization could also be in um, it is in the making someone a saint, right? Like, so the
Agreed. Yeah.
dehumanization is like, oh yeah, like this person is a superhero, or this person is a saint. Like they have that ability, they have that strength, they have all this resilience, and so it is just it's not just in like this person is less than human, but this person is more than human. They're tapped into some spiritual well that none of us, that like that
Magical
more
Negro.
material people, yeah, the magical Negro, and that
Right.
can actually be in the canonization of Black women until they are decanonized for being human being and just as corruptible in power as anybody else. It's like then the backlash could be really, really harsh. Like I mean, it'll be very swift as we're seeing in today's headlines. Or this week's headlines
Right.
with another popular figure.
Right. Yes. Yes. Someone who had yes, and ooh, that's an episode unto itself.
Yes.
I agree. So it's like and the thing is that they did that with Obama, right? They held
Mhm.
Obama up as this person who was going to deliver us into a post-racial America, and then and we knew this was going to happen. Like I actually went into a Starbucks the day after the elections, right? The day that they announced it that he won, and I picked up a newspaper. I literally took like filmed myself doing this because I wanted to get people's reactions like around me, and I was like, "My God, Barack Obama won!" And I yelled really loud, and I was like, "Finally, racism is over!" Right? And by the way, this was in like Northern Virginia where it's like uber white, right? And people were like really uncomfortable. But the point that I was making though when I did that was that they do these performative measures in order to sort of indicate to everyone that they don't want to talk about it anymore. Like, okay, you got Obama, and now you got this saint, and you got this person who's been canonized, so we can move past to talk about races. So I feel like they do that like intentionally to sort of distract you from the fact that they're still racist.
Yeah, or when they like that one person, they're like, yeah, like, I'm not a racist. I got this Black friend, I invite her over for dinner
Right.
and she likes me and I like her. So that's, like you become this like evidence of that um, you know, of not being racist and so I mean, we have that, but it's also like holding up, like, I really admire and respect this
Right.
super resilient Black person that was able to do some amazing things despite um, all the obstacles. So,
I don't know what I would
I
have
mean, we
done if
have
I
a
were in
long
your
way to
place.
go. Yeah,
I don't know what I would have
exactly.
done. Oh my God, you were so powerful, like Black Girl Magic. I don't know what I would have done, like if I were in your shoes, like if I didn't have all my privilege and stuff. Like it's weird how it's like simultaneously a flex and like a ding. It's like, all right, man, just stop. Like
Yeah.
so. And I've had people come to me and be like, what can we do to help? And it's like, you can listen to me once I answer this question for the last damn time. That's what you can do, right? You can read. Here's a list. Like, go to this website. Like,
Yeah.
give me
Yeah.
$5,000 anyway. So yeah, so the thing that I find particularly egregious about this too, by the way, is the fact that the terms and I if the terms were set forth by the Lax family of keeping the settlement private, I could understand, but I don't think that that's the case. I think that that oftentimes the transgressor is the one that names those terms because
Hmm.
they don't want to be seen because they know if they were being magnanimous and they were being just, they would not hide it, right? They were like, we're going to give these people like $12 million, right? Despite the fact that we made trillions off of these cells, trillions, right? Like, I don't think people understand even mRNA vaccine technology came from the HeLa cell, right? So there are all of these
Yeah.
medical advancements that have come from this one cell, this one person's cell. So anyway, so that part kind of bugs me a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that, and it's, I mean, yeah, like a lot of times they set the terms, right, of what's going to happen, and when you have like, like the person who's impacted the is just like the plaintiff, and it's like you just kind of are only able to like you get what you get, and it's like how long can you carry on that fight before you say like, okay, we got something out of that, but they still want to say like, oh yeah, back in the day we were, we did something wrong, but like that. this is not like people aren't really profiting. I mean, they had some kind of crummy statement. I'm just
Yeah, it
trying to
was. Oh, you were looking for it? Yeah.
it was just like, yeah, I'm looking for the like what did they say? But I was just like, okay. Um the like what was their kind of defense of it. Um but it's like it's just so I mean, it's just really incredible. Around like how this played out and that they fought it, I mean that they did fight it. And so it
Yeah.
is,
Well, I
like
think
when
that.
we're speaking on reparations, right? And the fact that they were just
Yes.
like, um, in this case, it's like this is this is why reparations matters.
Yes.
And
Absolutely. But
so they
also,
were,
they have to
yeah.
stop doing it
Hmm.
for reparations to be effective. This systemic racist garbage has to stop. Like if they're still doing it, but they're giving us like money and access to like loans and access to like colleges,
Hmm.
it's still ham. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Hmm.
for me, part of reparations is cessation of hostilities.
Yeah. So here's like yeah, in their statement, Johns Hopkins said they reviewed all the interactions with Lax and her family after the book, and then they acknowledged an ethical responsibility. Their statement said that the medical system has never sold or profited from the discovery or distribution of HeLa cells and does not own the rights to the HeLa cell line.
Which is crazy. Which is I mean a bald faced lie, right? It's you can see it all around you how they profited from it. It's all around you. As I said, mRNA vaccines, there's a bunch of stuff. So that's patently false. I mean, if you believe that, then you may as well believe in Santa Claus because that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, there was one other thing I wanted to say about it, but I want to say too that the movie, which is I don't know if there was more than one movie, but I remember seeing the movie with like Oprah Winfrey. I did not like that movie. I'm sorry, but the portrayal because it made Henrietta Lacks out to be just this crazy person. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I felt like that with
Yeah,
the
I
movie.
didn't watch it.
I
Yeah.
watched. I couldn't make it through the whole thing. It was like so much of it because apparently she did suffer from some mental health issues. It maybe even some substance abuse issues. I can't recall because it's been a few years. But I was like, this movie isn't about like her being exploited. This movie is about her like her being mentally unwell. So it was
Hmm.
just high drama for like nothing. I don't know. It was not a good
Yeah.
payoff for me. So
It like missed the point, missed the point as far as
right.
like explaining. And it's like, did you have to make it into a drama as opposed to a powerful, like, I mean, I think I would have preferred like a powerful documentary or, like, I mean, there's just some things that just don't translate well to
Yes.
filmmaking. But maybe documentary and illustrating like how people profited off of the suffering of people to like really highlight what is the cost or what has been the profit of the unpaid labor and also unpaid harvesting of black bodies and experimentation to really kind of bring that home. um, so yeah, just so it wasn't on my list of things to watch. Yeah, I mean, I think
I
the book is powerful, and folks
Yes, the book
just
is
sometimes
powerful.
need to open up a book. I just need to open
And
up a book and read.
there are also a few other there's and I'm gonna I don't I'm not gonna mention them here because I actually completely dropped the ball on this one. There are a few books about medical apartheid that are written by black women. There are some great books about women in the medical industry, black women in the medical industry and STEM, which I'm going to probably do a TikTok on so that people can see what that's about. Um, before we move on to to foundation, I wanted to mention that I have a paper coming out in a Japanese community um, journal. It's a community journal of environmentalism, and I was notified a couple of days ago at like 4:30 in the morning, and I got a string of texts of
Very cool.
congratulations. I was basking in the glory. I'm not mentioning it here because I want to like up myself. I mean, not really, but I wanted to mention it because it is scientific, and I want people to understand the importance of community, community intellectual pursuits. Yes, there are people who have spent their entire lives studying a specific thing, and those people are dedicated and they're committed and they know what they're doing. Most of them, but that should not mean that you should automatically exclude yourself from doing things on your own, because that's what I did. And I'm not saying that I'm a master. I'm not saying any of that stuff at this, but several years ago, I began researching the idea of metabolic systems for abating climate change. And I got the idea from a book that was called Aurora, it was written by Kim Stanley Robinson, which these people lived on a generation ship and they had to have a metabolic ring where there was zero waste. Everything got recycled. And I was
Mhm.
like, we talk about that in science fiction, but how are we actually doing it? And so this project that I had four parts. And one of the parts was biodesalinization and biodeacidification of water. And the reason why I did that part is because when within 10 years, climate change will produce 255 million climate refugees within the next 10 years. That's
Mhm.
255. That's like a population like almost the size of the United States. It's a big population, okay?
Yeah.
But one of the major things that we're going to face is the absence of water. Oddly, the U.S. is not really one of those countries. This country is literally sitting on a giant underground river, right? We haven't even accessed that water yet. But what people don't realize is that sea levels rise doesn't just deprive us of land, because what we see as sea levels rise is only part of the equation. The rest of it's happening beneath the soil. So what's happening is that as
Yeah.
we watch sea levels rise, underneath us, seawater is beginning to desalinate our soil even before we see it. And it salinates our rivers and our waterways, which are major sources of food for most of us, and water. And so I I begin to focus on ways that, since there is very little political will to change, how we can mitigate those impacts on communities on a community level. And so I built a biodesalinator slash deacidifier. The results were not what you would call miracle level, but they were what you would call net positive. So using a fisheries tank in an abandoned gymnasium, I where I slept for, where I slept for like 2 weeks. Right, it was really uncomfortable because I had to make sure that the algae samples weren't being contaminated, but because it was exposed to the elements. But I basically used I used seawater essentially, and I desalinated it, you know, measurably. It wasn't enough that you necessarily want to drink it, but it was like, I use filter feeders and other stuff anyway. So this
It's
organization,
amazing. I mean, I
this,
I wanted, so you were able to like do this experiment. I mean, every time I talk to you, it's like there's just something new. I'm like, wow, you did that too. So
I didn't do it alone. I had like six people helping me, like six people around the world. Six people around the country were replicating. We were all replicating the experiments, right? So as part of
hmm
this metabolic system, we were all, doing soldier fly composting. We were all doing, biogas digesters, because we wanted to compare each other's results. And all of those elements, like I said, there's four elements, are designed to work in conjunction with one another to generate power at dramatically reduced, like 90% carbon reduction, to deacidify water. I mean, that was the point. I mean, we got the idea from spawning
hmm
pools because we were like, how do we purify water? And I was like, we can use algae and we can create algae pools that will like take feces and stuff out of our water, and which is actually a fairly well known method. But the biodesalinization one hasn't been done on an academic level, and so
hmm
there's not a lot of research on it. And I was like, well, let's try it. So I did, and I didn't just use algae. I also used mycelium also. So I
hmm
used like a three
Yeah, that
phase
makes
desalinator, and I was like, if I can establish that this is usable, then maybe somebody who's smarter and has better specific knowledge of these systems will come in and take and pick it up and go, yes, let's do this. So anyway, so it's a community journal. I'm just as happy with that. My goal is not to be Mr.
hmm
Published. They approached me and I was like, yeah, man, let's run with it. And we're,
That's
they
amazing.
They were like, we can't use all the research because there's too much of it, but we want to talk about biodesalination. Obviously, because they're an island nation, right? It's going to be important to them to have access to clean water in the future. So, so, um, so as this, from a science perspective, I wanted to shoot that in there. So,
Yeah, no, no, I'm just really glad that you're doing, and like I said, I mean, there's always like more for us to continue to talk about. I mean, one, it's like the refugees, like the displaced people from climate change. And so this is going to be our next big crisis. Like this is already a crisis. Many of our economic refugees are coming from, they're being driven by globalization, right? Like where it's like the conditions that of our demand, our consumerism in the global north is driving kind of policies in their school, like whether it's like not being able to have free schooling, but also authoritarian regimes to extract labor. The disparities that we're actually causing through exploiting the global south. And then on top of that, it's subsistence farming that's impossible in many places. And before we had modern borders, that people were able to be pastoral nomads and relocate. So we're seeing a lot of conflict in places like in the Sahel, like within, and this is what actually was driving a lot of the conflict in Darfur in the early 2000s, were the conflicts between the more sedentary populations and the pastoral nomads who are being driven in different, like it's like the
yes,
tensions in farming. And then like these are like identities that transcend borders, but those conflicts have existed for centuries, but yet people would be able to relocate easily. But now they need passports. Now people aren't able to migrate as freely or move as freely. And I think it's very important for us to think about the impact that we're causing, right, with climate change in the global north, how that's impacting the global south, and that if we don't get our act together, right, not only will that drive even further destabilization of countries and economies, but we're also jeopardizing our own resources, that we're just like, yeah, we're still holding off on that while we exploit, oil and gas
right,
and and mining and doing all these kind of really toxic things. So I mean, you could kind of see these themes. So we could bring it back to foundation, right? You could see these kind of themes in whether it's the outer rim, the exploitation of like resources. I mean, I'm kind of getting a hint around that with like in the tensions between empire and dominion. But I'm and the resources and like even like the use of the pigments, which I'm just like, okay, so there was, but it's like the paint and the pigments. And but I'm not I'm still trying to understand the kind of the global system that exists, because it just seems like what is the main planet? Is that Trantor? The main planet
Trantor, yeah,
like required? Yeah, Trantor requires a lot of resources to build that, like all those super structures. And I'm not quite understanding the economy to build those super, I mean, it's almost like this planetary structure that exists, and how that's driving like
no, I'm
this
not laughing at you.
this like
I've been
galactic.
sorry. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I've been trying to get this word into the podcast for like 3 weeks, but I keep forgetting to mention it. It's called an ecumenopolis, and it's a planet city.
Hmm.
It's a city. It's basically just a planet that's like, that's a city. It's a continuous city, and in many cases, the ecumenopolis is built upon not only older structures, but it's built over the planet itself. Right? I don't know if you remember from Andor, when that one uh, uh, double agent officer took, I forget who it was, that one scientist, and they went to a tour, and there was just like this tree just coming out of the ground, and they were like, "This is the very top of this tree, which is like this big. It's but it grows all the way down to the soil, except that there's hundreds of levels of city between, like, you can't touch grass, right, on an ecumenopolis. You're living in a
Yeah. We
city
can't get
perpetually.
grounded.
Right. But I think to answer your question though, my assumption, because so much of this is modeled on what looks like Roman, like Greco and Roman, like, civilization. My assumption is that they pacify these systems and then they extract their resources, and so it's probably not all that different than how the United States operates today, right? Probably in a more obvious imperial, not neo-imperial system. So that would be my assumption.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested in like transport, how they're transporting all these materials. So there's that. I mean, I would love to see the kind of world building and logic that it's in the screenwriter's room. Like, what does their story Bible look like? Need to
I'm
know.
curious about that too, because I feel like this season they really are kind of. I feel like they're dropping the ball a little bit. There's a lot of filler this episode,
Hmm.
this season so far. But I wanted to hit upon something that it bugs me. It bugs me so much. I can't tell you how much it bugs me. But there's this moment in the beginning. Did I blow past the beats? Do I need to do the beats, or
Yeah,
we
we
just
didn't even go into the beats. We are. I mean, are we going to go through the beats? Or are we
we
just
don't
kind
have
of?
to.
It
We
is.
don't have to.
I mean, it's just like the
So
sort of
there's this
sketch.
scene is most. So I just want to say most of it was filler, and they talked about the story between Dominion and Day, but mostly it was about Dominion trying to get information about whether or not Day had her family killed. Then there was the Bel
Mhm.
Rios part of the story where Bel Rios was sent to Sienna to find out if there is these priests operating pretending they were magic, and then there was the Hober Mallow storyline where the priests get Hober Mallow back to Terminus into the vault where they talk to Harry, and that's pretty much the
Mhm.
story. Um, but this thing that bugs me, which is in the very beginning, um, Dominion's handmaiden, I forget what her name is, her adjutant says, "Empire turns everyone into a courtesan," right? And the thing is that that statement struck a nerve with me because this is what bugs me the most about what we see in modern empire and modern cultural hegemony is so many people rail against it, so many people talk about resisting it, so many people talk about fighting it, but there are ways that you can still succumb to empire that make all of your other efforts completely useless. And that's when you give yourself to it, right? When you constantly consume and patronize that hegemony, when you and even physically giving yourselves to it, right? Giving yourselves to your not just your labor, but your physical bodies, your affection. You're still co-signing it when you do that. You are still co-signing it when you are saying, "I will take an average this over an exceptional that." That is absolutely
Mhm.
it is part of these narratives that have been spun over the last 150 years by Western hegemonies and the rise of like this, the violence of nation states. They're designed to put that in your mind. They're designed to put this idea that an average imperial is superior to an exceptional, you know, a colonial, subject, quote unquote. And that aggravates me. It's like I love this really average and crappy music because it came from the Imperial Core. I love this really average and you know what I mean, this really average and crappy TV show because it came from the Imperial Core. And honestly, I love this really average person because they came from the Imperial Core. Sorry, that
Or
aggravates me.
even like, what if it feels like not like but like below average? You're like, oh, here's a subpar thing that's just like held up as like the model of like
Right.
the you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, I mean, and so we're really seeing that as like as opposed to being. I mean, there is. I guess for me, it's also like in the rebellion of that, right, or the rejection of that. It also serves as like the like in the pressure cooker, it's like a release valve for it. So even in the resistance, actually allows for it to continue. And
Yes.
so that's the thing that is that's definitely unnerving. That and I don't want to necessarily be nihilistic in it, right? It's like as far as like in thinking about resistance or how um like what is our role in, in the system as we're kind of upholding that. I mean, for example, like nonprofit system is really like that pressure valve when government things that government can't do to protect you from, it's like, oh yeah, we have like a charity on housing, and it's like, well, because they've made where housing is unaffordable. Like if we actually fix that, then there would be housing for everybody. So, those are the kind of things that we're kind of seeing. But I want to go into like the kind of critiques of it, like I feel like there's a lot of dynamics there. Sometimes like in some of the little bit of the icky writing, a little bit of icky casting choices, right?
Right.
That come out in the beats of the story. So you have women of color as in these like very strange roles, and so then it starts out with, here's like a ruler and she's supposed to be like the weakest of her family, and this is like the first time hearing that,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so that kind of bothered me. So it's like, when you really think about it, there is the narrative trope around the tragic mulatto. um I was feeling that in this episode
I'm sorry.
of
I'm trying not
like,
to. I'm trying not to laugh because it's a little funny. Go ahead.
yeah, tragic. I mean, they were playing that up,
They did. They did. I know. I'm
beautiful
also.
tragic mulatto.
Yes. Go ahead, please.
The
Sorry.
Asian dragon lady, both are using their sexuality to get something. That's kind of icky writing there. Um, they could have done better with more nuance, right?
And more just
And
more competency around statecraft and tradecraft. Right. They could have achieved the
mhm,
same objectives through making these two women of color just competent.
yeah, like why can't they
Please,
be like
please.
good chess players, like three-dimensional chess, martial arts kind of thing where they actually showed like, hey, my value is strategic, but it's like bed mates. And it's like, really, you could get what you want, anything that you want. And when it all comes down to it, it's just like, you know, like however
Yes.
long that it takes, like maybe an hour session and that's going to change your whole empire. No, you know, like they couldn't clone or find a double like with much more, exotic skill set. So it's like I'm just not, so I just felt like that was some weak writing, but also just not thinking about, hey, we do have the trope of the dragon lady, very clear, right? There is, you could read Bogle's work on, black tropes in like in Hollywood and racial tropes. The tragic mulatto is like always that classic trope that's existed since, I mean, since The Last of the Mohicans, the
Yes.
first American novel. So
James
you're
Fenimore
getting
Cooper.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, but because he had the mixed race character who eventually dies, but it's like, she's not fitting in anywhere. Her whole family has been killed. You're like, but yeah, and then you're feeling kind of, like, because I mean, she fits both the aesthetic, but she's also very exotic, like at the same time, and so, but she's using her courtesan wiles, which that's also was the thing. It's like it's always like the hypersexual black woman, and but like the Asian woman who's unabashed about it. Like I was just like, no, why are we doing this today?
Well, the
Why are we
demure
doing
Asian woman,
this
right, who's
today?
like in public, who is that trope anyway, who is this way,
Hmm.
but then he's like, oh, but I remember joyous copulation, and I was like, ugh, man, I rolled so hard. But I wanted to mention one part that I really didn't want to gloss over, which was the idea of memory erasure, right? So they erase the memories of these
Hmm.
sexual encounters they have with these people, which there's there's gotta be some issue around like consent and like retroactive consent in there. I can't quite get my mind around it, but the idea that they're erasing these people's memories is really gross, right? Because literally anything could have happened, right, in those sexual encounters, and then they
Yeah,
just erased it. But then they keep recordings of it, which is also weird. So the thing that bugged me about it was that the minions aide said that she got a lot of political clout out of having sex with Day back in the day. And I was like, oh, man, like I can see how that would be the case, but did you have to write that into this? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, they didn't have
it
to
was
write that into the
it was
script.
really it was just icky all around. Do you know what I mean? It just was gross.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I just felt like it's going into this area that is
Weird mutual
yeah, like it
fetishization.
wasn't. Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, it's too like it's like it is like it's fetishizing the women of color for sure, and then like one, she's supposed to be the mother, right, of this new empire. Um, so it's like her womb is for sale, but yet she's thinking, yeah, the person I'm supposed to marry like wiped out my family. And yeah, so that and I mean, I'm
The
not
only
sure where that's going. Like
the
I
only way
just
to
like
salvage that
but
is if
I
she was like at the end of that story arc, she was like, dude, I totally wiped out my own family. I wiped out my own family so that I could then blame you for it, and then you need me. You know what I mean? Like if she was like, but then she still could have done that without all the hypersexualization. So,
mhm.
but so I want to. There's a topic in here that I want to talk about, but I first have to admit this is me, Jay Austin Yoshino, on air, admitting to you that you were indeed correct. You were 100% correct about what a piece of hot garbage Bel Rios is. Because we talked about pink washing. We talked about using the fact that he is, he's gay, he has a husband. We talked to them about that, using that element to sort of pink wash his career, his military career. His career essentially, presumably, oppressing and pacifying planets. So, and I was like, yeah, and I agreed with you, but I wasn't as vociferous as you. And I was like, yeah, but I thought it was pretty cool because they at least did a good job with the nuance. What they did was they used a lot of really good nuance and good writing to pinkwash.
Mhm.
Because my man, first of all, can I just tell you how completely insane it was for him to take his husband on a mission
Yeah.
to Sewena? Like, why are you taking your husband, dude? Also, why are you going? Why don't you? You're the supremacist of the fleet. Okay, you're basically like an admiral. You got a whole division, S3 intelligence of operatives who can do this junk for you, right? And I know, yeah, that they wanted more screen time for the actor, whatever, blah 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 blah, but it still didn't really make that much sense. But then they get into a conflict with some of the locals, and he takes pleasure in murdering them. He was like, for
Yeah. And
last episode, he was this man of the people, right? Free all the prisoners, right? And now he's like laughing and shooting people. He punches this black woman in the face. What the hell?
yeah.
Please,
That
I
was
would love your take
crazy.
on
I
this.
mean, I shouldn't say crazy. That was ableist. Oh, yeah, like the dynamic of the pristine, like, I mean, these are like the ultimate, like, white gay couple gentrifiers coming into like Oakland and like, like using force to like run roughshod over the neighbors, like, I mean, it was just like they just like really enjoyed that, and so it's and they knew like they could win, like they knew like their skills, like these folks, like they may be a little bit rough around the edges, but like if but I mean, well, one, like like an admiral would never be like it would have been boring screen time for them to do what what was in the novel, which is just talk about the strategy, like that's all they would do in the
Right.
novel. But instead, it's like to show this action scene of his brutality, which is like there's no way like they would go on this spy mission for one informant who was living well compared to like everybody else super suffering. I mean, that spot was nice.
It
Like I
was.
was like, I could live there. I was
Yes,
like,
it
oh
was.
my God, like that is the ultimate pad. Um, and everybody else was just struggling,
Right.
like they all had terrible like because I mean when you have dental issues like that is like it's super painful, so they're just sitting there struggling,
Right.
And the old man's like, you know what, I'd rather die than just be. Even then, like, he was just like, just kill me now. Um, so I don't really understand that dynamic. That threw me off. Like, I was like, what? Like, they could just, so he was the informant, but like, through all the disparities, like he was living swell, and
Had books.
then everybody else is, yeah, yeah. And he had the Bhagavad Gita. Did he have the Bhagavad
Yes,
Gita?
he
I
had the
think he had
Bhagavad
the.
Gita. I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I was like,
I can't ignore the
okay.
confluence, right? Oppenheimer, right? Bhagavad Gita.
Hmm.
Like this guy has. I'm trying to understand Westerners' obsession with that book because it doesn't
And
say what they think it says, right? They think that it's a justification for abject violence in warfare, right? In the case of Oppenheimer, right? I am
no.
become death. I am become death, the story of worlds. And then also Goebbels, right? Goebbels carried a copy in his pocket, right? If you look at all of the Nazi
Mm,
propaganda in the 40s, it all looks very similar to the illustrations of those early editions, early 20th century editions of the Bhagavad Gita. So they're taking it out of its original spiritual and philosophical context. Do you know what I mean? But
hmm
it also says something about, to me, that was like a jab at Bel Rios, right? Because Bel
hmm
Rios is the emperor in this instance, and his husband is the charioteer, and they're debating the rationale of war. Meanwhile, Bel Rios is punching black women out and having a good old time.
Yeah, yeah, that's just like, I mean, but even in that, so as we kind of talk about like the violence and both the sexual violence and the stuff of black women and but there's no way like somebody of his rank would be doing that dirty work, like that he was just like in prison doing that. I mean, so that was just terrible writing. I mean, I'm just like, that's with some BS there. Um, we're not in Star Trek, like the captain of the ship would never just like beam down and go like, because then what, like you get rid of the captain, how are they going to even know what to do next? How are they
Right.
going to know, like, this is like this person that has this high strategy and deep understanding. So they would have had like some foot soldiers, people that they would have seen as expendable, right? But like highly trained and possibly expendable people get that information, and they couldn't even beam the guy up. He was the informant, and then like it was just sort of
Right.
like, so the informant was, but that's also the other thing that I thought was crappy writing. Typically, like an informant is someone who is compromised legally in that status. Like they're not just living swell and just giving information. Like they've been so compromised that they have to get, and that the when they've been coerced into becoming an informant, it's because like and they're like, yeah, we'll actually we'll let you, like we'll let these other people know so you'll die. So it's like there is a lot more informants have a status where they're like either like not having enough money, or they may give a little bit, and then there's a lot of threat of further violence or exposure to that, so they're fully like embed, like drawn in to that process. So it's like, that's, so I was just kind of like, so how is the informant who lives separate from the people know all the things? Like it would have been like maybe somebody in the crowd. So yeah, I was like, I think it was just
Can I
like they were
just
trying to build out the world.
say
Mhm.
this part because they're never. I mean, like I know that world is going to be kind of important at some point because apparently they're trying to bring that world into the terminus, into the foundation. But this is the part that really got me because he was like, I've been sending messages for years and years, but nobody answered, and I'm like, bro, you could have just sent all these video feeds to them. They didn't need to come down here. Like if you're sending messages for years, they're like, show us what you have, and then he turns on the projector and he's like, here's this priest and here's what they did, and I'm like, dude, you could have just sent that. They didn't need to set eyes on you. They didn't need to compromise your cover. They didn't need to do anything. Like so, like the whole thing was kind of like that scene where John Boyega and Rosemarie Tran leave the battleship to go on this side adventure in that Star Wars movie. Like it was just pointless, right? Like I was just like, wow, that was you just wasted like half. That's what I mean by filler. Sorry.
Yeah,
So
it's like trying to do world building, but without like, yeah, because I was just like, So all that they were getting this thing that there were these priests, but that was like a secret when everybody saw that.
Right. Exactly.
But I mean, I get, yeah, like they were anti-empire, but there could have been like way cooler ways to do that. But I don't know. I mean, who am I to say? So we'll just let
I
it
can tell you
kind
for
of
certain
pan
people that
out.
intelligence does not operate that way. Um, okay, so here, okay, so let's talk about. This is the part that like is going to aggravate me the most. We got to talk about it. So taking the two priests, Brother Constant and the other guy whose name I forget, take Hober Mallow into the vault to meet Harry, and there was so much in this that was problematic. I don't even know what to say, but I want to start off by saying, and this is somewhere else where the writing is weak. Brother Constant as a character and the other priest, the old curmudgeonly drunk and the young pious nymph is not working. It's not working at all. As archetypes, it makes the characters not only it doesn't help flesh the characters out, it makes me dislike them because
Hmm.
do you know what I mean? It's like the way that it's like their attributes are painted onto them. They're not living them. Do you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I believe that Salvor Hardin, as an example in the previous season, I believed that she was a sexual being, but and not hypersexualized, but I believe that she was a sexual being because she loved a person who she occasionally shared a bed with, and they showed that. Here it's like
Hmm.
he drinks, right? The main character that one priest drinks, but it doesn't really affect the story, right? He still seems to be lucid and sober enough, more or less, to do his job. And then she's like,
Yeah.
kind of like his junior priest, but she's kind of a hornball that just kind of travels with him, right? And I'm
Yeah.
and so do you know what I mean? Like it just
Yeah.
doesn't. It's not believable.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I mean, she's definitely not playing that up or just like as a. But those are the kind of tropes as you have like somebody in a priesthood or like the monk that's like young but kind still kind of horny or corruptible. Like if there's somebody that is um tempting, like they'd be like, yeah, I could do this. But I mean, it's like it's her coming on to him, which yeah, it doesn't really work. They don't look like a good couple. They don't have chemistry. The close talking didn't really do anything. And those contacts are just really terrible.
Oh God,
It's
the
really getting
contacts
on
are
my nerves.
awful. They're so awful, and like they can't be comfortable. But also
Yeah.
their whole vibe, her and Hober Mallow's whole vibe was, oh, so I just discovered that you were kind of a hornball, like you were really promiscuous, and I was kind of hoping to add my notch to your belt. Like that was their combo,
Yeah.
which is the craziest. There was like they spent 2 or 3 episodes making her out to be this kind of sexualized religious nymph kind of archetype, and then in that one moment they totally stripped all of her sexual agency from her. Right, they were like, oh yeah, she's gonna like swoon over this guy even though he's got this, do you know what I mean, even though he's really promiscuous. It was so bizarre. Like I was like, that did not.
Yeah, like it was just like another notch. And it's just like even in like how she approached it was like very awkward in the middle of a thing, like they're like on the middle of the like, and then why would he care that she was kind of sad? Like if he just had all, and he's like, okay, maybe the 10th, I don't like to be,
Right.
but it was just kind of like, what, like, but then why does she have to be virginal? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like they're just like really obsessed with that.
Right.
So yeah, whoever wrote that beat, they suck.
I would have been like,
Sorry, I
look,
just had to say that. Just like,
Harry didn't say I had to leave right now. We got a ship sitting right here. I'm gonna give my man brother what's his face this bottle of rum, and we can go into the and we can go into the ship and like do we gotta like. It was so like, and it was. I know that they did that to sort of establish this kind of sense of longing that maybe they would be reunified, that they would become a thing, but it didn't work for me. I
yeah,
was
but
like,
it's like it
dude,
was gross. Like,
it was
no.
gross.
I mean, even then, like, but even like a young person, like they would be like, I just want to be another notch. Maybe it'd be like your experience, these other blokes, like they just are gonna be really rough, I want to have this amazing experience, but like, and you got all these tricks. So what kind of tricks you got? Maybe she could be like, either she could be kind of fun or she could be
Right,
like, okay,
right,
I want to make sure it's like meaningful.
right.
Like you're
Yes,
over Mallow, the thing called you. So I want to be, something about you is going to be special. And it's like, no, like none of this, no
right.
mysticism to it. There's no like maybe a lore. But this is the whole thing where I think it's like, and I'm just gonna, like I mean, maybe like I mean, I went to grad school in the early 2000s. So, Foucault, really talking about sexuality and like how it's been made so explicit, like how like there was like a lot of talk around like how we kind of reduce the mystery of it, like to be a notch or recopulated, like I mean, there's just like a lot more to certain acts than just you're just copulating. Like, I mean, they could have used a different word. They
Yes,
could
that
have
was
been
the
like,
grossest word
like by this
ever.
ever, but it's just like, but even like maybe there's like by this time, like we're like, how far are they in the future? Maybe there's some mental things that are happening with telepathy of merging of ideas and so that are just more pleasurable, that are actually part of that. Like there's more to sex than just the act itself. It's like there is like the vibe, like, and they're all like filthy. Like, I'm just like, she's been in the same dirty outfit. Like, this is the most unsexy scene I have ever seen. Thumbs down.
Yeah,
I would never want to see them get down ever
ever,
in that
ever.
dirty
You still,
shit
yeah,
ever.
yes.
Like, I just
So
as a Muslim, like, but I mean, I wouldn't want to see that written. I wouldn't want to see that described. I would just be like, they'd have to like surprise me like Game of Thrones. You'd be like, oh, I want to see that, like, so it's just like,
right, like it
no,
would like right. So
the cat
that
agrees
wasn't even the
too. The
most
cat's
problematic
like,
part. Most problematic part of that episode because Harry Seldon says he speaks about religion as though it were
oh yeah,
a religious phase. He says, "Oh, I see you're in a religious phase," and rather than do anything to negate it, he feeds it. He says,
mm-hmm.
he speaks about it as though it were a foregone conclusion, which I find really bizarre when you consider because that does occur in the books, but I found it bizarre considering that Asimov was an atheist, right? He says that um, that you're in a religious phase, but then when he's talking to Homer Mallow later on, he says that it's a necessary element, right? All great civilizations go through a religious phase before they and many of them never escaped that phase. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
the United States is a classic example of that, by the way, of an empire that never escapes a religious phase. But I find it
Mm-hmm.
strange that there were no warnings. In other words, he didn't say, "Hey, you know what?
Yeah,
By the way, it would be a really bad idea if you deify me or you deify the concept of psychohistory and science." He didn't do that. He fed
yeah,
it, and it was in.
yeah,
It felt very hypocritical because it's like again with empires, do what I say, not what I do. Do what I do, not what I say, or do what I say, not what I do. Sorry, like it's that had that vibe to it.
yeah. Like it was like, and then using the religious language, right, for that.
Profit.
And then what happens in the um in the vault. So like in the vault, like which can be like the creation of these particular, moving of molecules and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just really struggling with that. Like the vault, like the radiant, and then how does this fit outside of things that are created in the galactic empire? Like are these technologies existing outside of
Yeah, I
this?
thought that was
Then
strange too.
why aren't we solving? Yeah, like so there's that inconsistency of it, but like in this space he can act like a god, but then and then outside of that, like people are kind of like sitting there, struggling and trying to get by, but there's like all this amazing food. So I'm just like, what the heck is going on? I'm so confused.
It
So
was also
confused.
inconsistent with
Um,
his stated goals, right? Which is this idea of
yeah.
the more you think about it, the more you, and they did caution last episode. They talked about how there was this potential for Foundation to become another empire, but it doesn't seem like that the Selden consciousness is trying terribly hard to prevent that. It seems like he's feeding it,
Hmm.
right? And I want to sort of remind people that what they're trying to avert is another Dark Ages, right? That's going